My name's Bob, an alcoholic. And I'm sober today only through the grace of a very, very loving God who's crazy about me and has no taste at all. Through good sponsorship, 12 traditions and 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous, and an awful lot of new people and an awful lot of newcomers. I'd like to welcome the people that are new. I'm real glad you're here. I'm real glad you're here. And I don't say that because I'm glad that you feel you're here and you don't feel so hot. Things have been going pretty bad in your life, and I'm not glad about that. But I'm glad that you're here because if you're here, there's hope. And maybe things can change, and as they changed for me. And if you can get even a small portion out of Alcoholics Anonymous of what I've gotten out of Alcoholics Anonymous, you probably will get the best deal you've ever gotten in your whole life. And I mean that. I'm not a spokesman for AA. I'm not a recruiter for AA. Actually, I think we're overcrowded. But if you suffer from alcoholism like I suffered from alcoholism and at times still suffer from alcoholism, I want you to have the same way out that I had and still have. I don't want to sound like a whiner. I'm a little tired tonight. I just did a long two-day workshop up at the San Fernando Valley Conference, and then I did this traditions thing, and I tell you, I'm about sick of my own voice, really. I really like being here. I love this group. See, I just came from, Mike and a couple of us were up there. I came from it's like one of those hotsy-totsy conventions. Don't be fooled by the fact that I got a coat and tie on. I came off the streets, and the Bel Air Malibu set is not really my type of Alcoholics Anonymous. This is more the grassroots AA that I'm used to, and I'm real glad to be here. I love the enthusiasm in this group. You guys are on fire with Alcoholics Anonymous, and that's just a wonderful thing. It's just a wonderful thing. I gravitate to people who are on fire with recovery. Just since I've been here, I've had just a bunch of conversations with a bunch of people that are just on fire with AA. They're just in love with Alcoholics Anonymous. And if you suffered from alcoholism, like I suffered from alcoholism, and you were given the life that I was given, how could you not fall in love with a thing called Alcoholics Anonymous? How could you not? It's more than I deserve. I think I was born with a disease called alcoholism. It's a spiritual malady. And if you're new here or not so new, and that kind of makes you uncomfortable as spiritual malady, I got to tell you, it made me uncomfortable too. But there's a line in our book, in We Agnostics, that says, do not let these terms deter you from asking yourself, what do they mean to you? And one of the things that has always been true in my whole life is that prior to my first finding alcohol when I was 12 years old, it seemed like there was something sick with my spirit. There seemed like there was something with me or about me that wasn't quite right. And it wasn't anything that you could find. You could put me on an MRI and you wouldn't find it. But it was something, and I lived with it and I felt it. It was like a vague separation between me and the rest of the world. It was almost like an invisible, impenetrable barrier between me and other people, that I could not seem to connect with you the way I lived observing you connect with each other. And the book says that alcoholics know a loneliness such as few do. And I was lonely as a kid. And you know the funny part about that is I had a lot of friends. And the loneliness that alcoholics experience, alcoholics of my type, is the kind of loneliness where you feel lonely and you're surrounded by people that love you and care about you, and you have lots of friends and you still feel alone. You feel separate and apart from. I think I've come to believe that I had this disease of alcoholism way, way beyond, before I ever took a drink. I think I probably was born with it. And I was like a freeze-dried alcoholic waiting for alcohol. And there was always something weird about me. I didn't come, and I by rights shouldn't be an alcoholic. I didn't come from an alcoholic home. My parents were not alcoholics. My parents were as far as I can figure, about as normal as you can get. In the whole history of my family, as far back as we can trace, I was the first person to ever get arrested, the first person to ever get divorced, the first person ever in any kind of institution for drug addiction or alcoholism, the first person that was ever an embarrassment to my family. I was like the squirrel in my family tree. And so I didn't grow up in what become popular the last dozen or so years, a dysfunctional family. My family was very functional. They were very successful. They were very loving. I was never abused as a child. I was loved and taken care of, and my parents adored me. They thought that I was wonderful. They always told me great positive things about me. They tried to instill in me a belief that there was nothing I couldn't do if I just put my mind to it. They gave me opportunities for education, great things. There was a lot of love in my family, but there was something about me where I couldn't really feel it. My sister could feel it. She doesn't have alcoholism. But the big book, Alcoholics Anonymous, says that guys like me, at the root of my disease is a thing called selfishness and self-centeredness. Is that I am overly self-involved. And because I'm that way, as a little kid, I look back over my life, no matter how old I was, no matter what age I look at, and the only thing I can remember about my childhood is me. I remember all about me. I remember what happened to me. I remember what they did to me. I remember when I didn't get the pony, and I remember on and on and on and on. All about me. I can't tell you what my mother and father struggled with, or what they were afraid of, or what difficulties they had, or what was a big deal to them. I can't tell you about my sister and any of her stuff at all, but I can tell you about me. If I know anything about them, it's only because it had to do with me. I was wrapped up in myself even as a little kid. And no wonder I didn't feel like I fit out here, because the truth was I wasn't out here. I was up in here. I lived most of my life prior to alcohol a prisoner in this control center in my head where I tried to run the universe. It's kind of like the bridge of the Enterprise, and there's guys running around. There's a guy up there like Spock that's very logical, and there's Bob, we will do this, and then we'll do that. There's another guy like that's like McCoy, and there's another guy like Bones. And in later years, there's a new character was introduced in the set, was a guy that just would run around no matter what was going on. There could be a war with the Klingons. There could be the breakdown of dilithium crystals. There could be Spock could be going crazy in his Vulcan wacko stuff, and this one guy would just say, well, that's all great, but let's drink. He had one solution to every problem that came up. Well, that's all fine. We won the battle. Oh, yay, let's drink. I mean, it's just it's one voice. And that character was introduced into my committee because when I was 12 years old and I took my first drink, it made me feel so good that the way I felt from that moment on was really never enough again, really. Not really. It gave me something that I always hungered for. And I'm the alcoholic that Silkworth talks about in the book. From my very first drink, I had that phenomenon of craving. I was always that way. I've never had a social drink in my life. I don't even know what it would be like to have a social drink. I know what it's like to feel social, but I don't know what it's like to have a social drink. Every drink of alcohol I've ever had has brought me closer to completeness, but not quite enough. I've never had enough alcohol in my life. I've never once said to myself, this is just right, I don't want any more. I've never been there. It's just not me. I'm the guy with the physical allergy to alcohol that expresses itself in a phenomenon of craving. I start drinking and it's just something inside of me that really never gets enough. It just wants more and more and more and more. And I started out when I was 12 years old, and it was really a lot of fun. I had about, my first drunk, I had a really good 30 or 40 minutes. I mean, it was really, maybe 45 minutes was really good. And then it kind of turned on me. But there was enough fun in that. Now, I had 40 minutes. I'm talking about glorious 40 minutes. If you've gone through life like I have, and up until that point and never really feel complete, never really feel like you're a part of, never can really talk to other people comfortably, and all of a sudden you find something that brings you not complete to completeness, but so close. Oh, just so close. I lived for it. It became the most important thing in my life. And I got in trouble the first time I ever drank. I had a blackout. I was carried home by the guys that I was with. I was dumped in the front yard of my parents' home in the middle of the afternoon. I found out later I laid there screaming obscenities at the top of my lungs. Trying to endear myself to the neighbors. I don't know. I came to, and my parents are trying to clean me up, and they're waiting to tell me what I did, as people waited all my life to always tell me what I did. And it's a tough... I never knew I was going to sign up for a life where other people would know more about me than I did. You would think that I would have said, man, this is terrible. This is a lot of pain and a lot of problems and a lot of hardship for 30 or 40 minutes of feeling good. But when it's the only 30 or 40 minutes you've ever known, I couldn't wait to get drunk again. And when you're a kid and you're 12 and 13 and 14 and 15 years old, you can't drink every day. It's just impossible. So I was a periodic by age till I got older, and I was able to drink every chance I could get. But I drank every chance I could get back then. And alcoholism, for my alcoholism, it was a progressive disease. As the years went on, my ability to get a sense of ease and comfort out of drinking seemed to diminish. The fun got less and less. My ability to obtain that type of effect got less and less as the years went on. And as that happened and the fun got less, the problems got greater. And I was always in trouble. I was always the guy that got caught. You know, I don't know what it was about me. I just always getting caught. And I seemed, and I started feeling like a victim, I just, like life was out to get me. When I went to my first meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous, I was a young kid. It was in 1971. I wasn't quite old enough to even take a legal drink yet. And I'm just a kid. I'd started hitting institutions as a teenager for alcoholism and drug addiction. And I'll briefly mention that I did a stint with drugs, and I was a drug addict for a while, and I went through all that stuff. Not because I'm not an alcoholic. If you had alcoholism and you grew up on the streets that I grew up in and the time that I grew up, and you ran with the kind of people I ran with, drugs was just part of the deal. It was just part of the deal. I was introduced to Alcoholics Anonymous. An Alcoholics Anonymous meeting in 1971. I was in an institution for heroin addiction. And I'm a young kid, and this counselor who worked there sent me to this AA meeting. And I don't want to go to Alcoholics Anonymous. No, man. I don't even drink really that much. I mean... the funny, alcoholism, and when a lot of people come into AA and they do a lot of drugs and they drink a little bit, and it's hard to see what's what. It's real confusing. It's like if you go out some nights, if you go out some days when the moon is in the sky in the daytime, the moon and the sun are in the sky at the daytime, the sun is so bright you can't see the moon. That don't mean it's not there. And at that point in my alcoholism, my drug use was brighter than the alcohol, so I couldn't see it. But the guy who worked there, that was a counselor, had seen me drink one time. And he saw something in me that I could not see. He saw the phenomenon of craving and the physical allergy. He saw that once I started to drink, I couldn't get enough. And he saw that thing in me. And he sent me to this Alcoholics Anonymous meeting, and I sat in the back of the room, which is really, if you really want to judge, it's a good place to sit. Sit back there and kind of figure out why you're not really in the right place. And I sat in the back of the room, and I didn't hear nothing. I didn't like the people there. The people there seemed very strange to me. They were very, very old. I mean, they were 30 years old, 35 years old. I mean, Jesus Christ. Old men and women and Alcoholics Anonymous. What has my life come to? So I didn't hear nothing. I didn't belong there. I didn't think I was an alcoholic. And Over the next couple years, I switched from one drug to another, back to alcohol, then to other drugs, and switching from one thing. My sponsor calls it like changing deck chairs on the Titanic. It's just, because I am the guy that Silkworth talks about. He says, if you take alcohol out of my life, and I stopped drinking when I was about 14 or 15 because I was in juvenile court so much and I was getting caught so much. And that's when I found drugs. And you take alcohol out of my life, and what Silkworth says is I become restless, irritable, and discontent unless I can again experience the sense of ease and comfort I'd once found in taking a few drinks. Now, I don't want to take the drinks anymore, but I got to have that ease and comfort, because the truth is, on my own without nothing, I'm just not enough. I'm just not enough, man. There's something wrong with me. And I went through several years in the drug thing back in the early 70s. And alcohol, I got to tell you something, alcoholics should not use drugs. We are pigs. I mean, and I am not a drug addict. And I'll tell you, I know drug addicts. I had friends that I grew up with that went to Vietnam, and they got over there, and they got physically addicted to heroin, and they came back to the United States. They didn't want to do that anymore. The VA detoxed them, and they never looked back. They didn't become winos. They didn't get addicted to cocaine. They didn't start drinking Jack Daniels and Jose Cuervo every day. They got married, started businesses, and lead normal lives. And then there's guys like me. Whatever I'm doing, if you take it away from me, boy, I'm going to have to find a substitute. I'm going to have to do something. And as the years progressed, and went back full circle to alcohol again, because I burned all that other stuff out. And I'm in trouble all the time. And there's times when I'm swearing off because the heat's on me. And I stop drinking and I go crazy. And I end up in psychiatrist's office, and they talk to me for a while, and I'm just a mess. You take the alcohol out of me, and if you don't medicate me, I just go nuts. And so I keep getting diagnosed as clinically depressed and put on medication, which all that does, the problem with medication is it's never really enough. You know, and you suffer through that half measure as long as you can stand it, and then I got to go get something else, because it's not really enough. All it does is it kind of puts the disease on hold for as long as you can stand it, right? Until I can't take it anymore, and then I got to go get drunk, because nothing's really changed inside of me. I still am suffering from alcoholism, and I don't know what's killing me. And as the disease progressed and it got worse and worse in me, I got scareder and more desperate, and I started coming to Alcoholics Anonymous meetings, and now I'm coming and I'm starting to want what you have. At least, I don't know, maybe it's not I want what you have, because I'm not sure what you got, but I'm starting to not want what I got. And I'm coming to the meetings, and I'm listening, and I'm trying to figure out what you're doing, and what I see in AA, the more I look at you, and the more I observe you, and the more I listen to you, the more confused I become. I'll tell you what I see. I see a whole bunch of people that stop drinking, so they say. I'm always a little suspect to that. They're not smoking nothing. They're not taking anything, and their life's wonderful. And I back in the 70s in Pennsylvania, I used to go to these speaker meetings, and it was always the same format back in Pittsburgh. You'd have a 20, 30-minute speaker who'd get up, he'd tell a tragic, sometimes funny drunkalogue, then he comes into AA, he puts the plug in the jug, and his life is miraculously transformed, and now he's the president of some big company, and he's happily ever after. And I'm sitting there thinking, I don't know, man, whatever's wrong with him ain't the same thing that's wrong with me. Because I ain't drinking, I put the plug in the jug, and I tell you something, I don't feel like that. My life ain't like that. I got none of that going. The real truth is, and I couldn't tell you this because I was afraid of what you would say. You see, there's a couple great fears that I've always walked around with, and I think a lot of them, I think they're like these unwritten laws of society. There's 4 of them. Law number 1, don't have anything wrong with you. Well, I'm sitting in Alcoholics Anonymous. I got a lot of stuff wrong with me, and I don't want to tell nobody. Rule number 2, if you do have something wrong with you, get over it quickly. I don't know how. Rule number 3, if you do have something wrong with you and you can't get over it quickly, at least act like you did. So I'm sitting here, and you know, I'm like the guy in chapter 11. How are you doing, Bob? Oh, work better, feel better, having a better time. You know, and what's really going on is I got a hole inside me you could drive a Mack truck through. What's really going on is abstinence, to me, feels like I'm doing time. Abstinence is a very desolate, a god-awful, painfully lonely place. A place where it seems like, to me, I live in a world where it's all of you and then there's me. And so the last rule of society, the unwritten rule, is if you do have something wrong with you and you can't get over it quickly and you can't even effectively act like you did, at least be properly ashamed of yourself. And so I remember sitting in Alcoholics Anonymous meetings being properly ashamed of myself. Sitting in Alcoholics Anonymous meetings and looking at you, and all that I observed was people who just pointed out in stark relief, just by contrast, everything I wasn't. You see, because I stopped drinking and I'm not happy, joyous, and free. I stopped drinking, I'm not grateful for anything. I stopped drinking, I don't love everybody. I stopped drinking, I don't have great jobs, I'm not have any success stories to tell you. I stopped drinking, and I'm restless, I'm irritable, I'm discontent, I'm prone to misery and depression. I can't control my emotional nature. I can't get along very well with people. I'm very insecure, and yet I'm very judgmental of you. And I feel so separate and apart from, and I'm full of guilt and shame, and I can't hold jobs. But other than that, I'm really kind of all right. So I sit in Alcoholics Anonymous meetings, and I come to a conclusion over the years that I was in and out that I think a lot of people come to a conclusion. It's an erroneous conclusion. And the conclusion I came to is God knows I am screwed up. And I have a lot of problems. And I guess I need some kind of help. But whatever's wrong with me is not the same thing that's wrong with you. Because I've stopped drinking, and you've stopped drinking. Look at you, look at me. It's not the same. And yet, there came a time when I was offered the solution. And see, the problem is I'm sitting in meetings of Alcoholics Anonymous with untreated alcoholism. All I've done is stop drinking. And I got to tell you, if you have the spiritual malady of alcoholism like I have it, and all you do is stop drinking, you will eventually get sicker. And because it is a vacancy that demands attention. And what happens is you can throw stuff at the beast. You can throw sex at it for a while. You can throw money at it for a while. You can throw changing of towns at it for a while. You can throw excitement at it. You can learn a lot of tricks in therapy groups and in the fellowship of Alcoholics Anonymous to give you temporary relief. But there is a big difference between relief and freedom. And I wasn't free because I was still in bondage of this disease. I was still in the bondage of self. I was still wrapped up in me, separate and alone and apart from. I was still spiritually sick. I was sick of spirit. And I would hunger for a medicine for my spirit. And the only medicine that I've ever found up until that point in my life that was worked for this thing that was wrong with me was about 5 shots of Jack Daniels. 5 shots of Jack Daniels would vitalize my spirit. 5 shots of Jack Daniels would relieve me of the bondage of self. I could walk into a bar so locked up in me that I can't talk to anybody, just kind of get away from me. Fed up with life. Fluctuating from homicidal to suicidal about every second. Just absolutely insane. Get away from me. Have 5 shots of Jack Daniels, and man, I could come out and play. 5 shots of Jack Daniels, and I'll sit in that same bar with those people I want to leave me alone and look around and kind of love them. You know? Alcohol was a treatment for my alcoholism. But as the disease progressed, my ability to control and enjoy my drinking got less and less. Until I got to my last couple years, I couldn't wring any enjoyment out of that. And I'm so out of control, my life is like a runaway train. And yet I still have the first delusion that it talks about in the big book. The delusion that some way, someday I'll control and enjoy this thing. Every run, I don't know about you guys, but if you look back over the last year you're drinking, you're anything like me, every run I started out with was started with a fantasy that related to something, a drinking that had happened 5 years ago, but it hadn't been that way in 3. Right? It's going to be like it was, and it wasn't like that no more. I never started out a run thinking, oh boy, it's in the dumpster again. I don't remember the reality of what it has become. I remember the delusion of what it had been. And at one time, alcohol was fantastic. I tell you, I don't regret being an alcoholic. I don't regret I regret some of the people I hurt. I deeply regret that. But I don't regret those good days. And I'm not a reformed drinker. Just because I crossed over a line and alcohol stopped working like that for me, I don't bad rap alcohol. I don't think you should bad rap a horse because it gets too old to pull the plow. But alcohol was a wonderful thing in my life for a number of years. Just when as the disease progressed and I got further and further into it, my ability to obtain that kind of effect, I lost it. And I'll tell you what the kind of drinker I became in the end. I drank in loneliness because I'd stopped trying to be social. I didn't even like to drink in bars. Sometimes I'd have to because that's the only way. I would go wherever the whiskey was or wherever the wine was. But given a choice, I'll tell you the way I like to drink, I like to get 2 cases of cheap vodka and go hole up in an abandoned building. That was my type of drinking. I don't want to be bothered by people. The ideal thing would be to have just a TV set and a couple cases of vodka, and I'd have been in heaven. Because I don't mix well with people at the end. I'm no longer the guy that's in some bar that's drinking and laughing and shooting pool and dancing with the girls and having a heck of a time. I'm not that guy no more. I was that guy. What I became the guy that's sitting in the corner of the bar, drinking himself into oblivion, feeling sorry for himself, looking at sometimes sobbing uncontrollably, hoping nobody will see him, looking at the people that are having a good time and thinking inside myself, my God, what's wrong with me? That used to be me. I was that. I was the guy that would come to bars and parties and pick up girls and make new friends, and I could mix it up. But I ain't that way no more. And I can't jumpstart the thing inside of me that used to make me that person. It doesn't work no more. And no matter what I drink, no matter how I mix it up with other chemicals, I can't get that going no more. And that's really what brought me into Alcoholics Anonymous. That's what brought me here. That's my bottom. Now, there was a lot of other problems in my life. I'd been sentenced to 2 years in prison. I was homeless for a couple years. The last couple years I was out there. But none of that stuff is what brought me to AA. Silkworth makes a statement that is very profound. He says after a while, we can't even differentiate the true from the false. We don't know anymore. He says our alcoholic life seems the only normal one. And the problem is we just adjust to that stuff. The first time you can't pay rent and you're out on the streets looking for a place to sleep, it's horrible. A year later, it's no big deal. You're just used to it. Matter of fact, it's kind of nice. You don't have to juggle no landlord no more. I mean, the heat's off, really. I mean, it's the adjustment that's hard. It's not being there. Everybody bad raps being homeless. Being homeless is not actually being home. I'll tell you what's harder than being homeless. What's harder than being homeless is being in the end of your alcoholism, trying to maintain a job and family and all that stuff, and juggle all that stuff, and they're on your back all the time. Now, that's hard. You lose all that stuff, it's almost like, it talks in the book about getting periods where we think we're regaining control. Once you've lost all that stuff, it's like, oh, now, man, hey. All right. And your life gets real simple. I got to come up with $1.29 2 or 3 times a day. That's it. I mean, it's not a big, this is before sign. We didn't have signs. We'll work for food. God, the first time I saw one of those, I almost wanted to go back out. I thought, Jesus Christ, that's awesome. You don't even have to get rejected. You just stand there and hold this sign. And I watched this one guy, this is like 10 years ago, the first time I ever saw it. This guy standing on the, people are just giving him money. I'm thinking, I was born at the wrong time. We used to have to go up to people, and God, you're so ashamed of yourself, and you just have to, you hang your head, and you just go, you got any spare change? I'm sorry. And you'd be so apologetic, you know. And then some guys would say, get out of here, you smelly, you know. I'd hear all that. I've heard all that stuff. I've been called everything you can, and you just adjust to that. That's not what brings a guy like me to Alcoholics Anonymous the last time, willing to get a sponsor and work these steps, willing to do absolutely everything. What brings me to a point where I'm as open-minded and as willing as only the dying can be is nothing but a lack of options. That's all. In A Vision for You, it says that we get to a place where we can't imagine life with it or without it. We will know a loneliness such as few do. We'll be at the jumping-off place. We'll wish for the end. I had a failed suicide attempt on my last drunk. I tried to throw myself off this bridge, and I just couldn't do it. I wanted to. I was just too afraid. And when you can't live with it, and it doesn't work anymore, make you feel any better, and you can't live without it because without it is such an awful place, and you can't kill yourself, man, there ain't nothing left. And that's my entrance to Alcoholics Anonymous. In our book, it says that before we ever come to believe that AA would work for us, before we ever come to believe that there's a God, it says we will first come to believe in the hopelessness and futility of our life as we'd been living it. So when we are approached again, after all these years of in and out, when we are approached again by those, you guys, within whom the problem had been solved, you know there's nothing left but to pick up the simple kit of spiritual tools you were laying at my feet. There was nothing left. If there had been a new type of antidepressant or a new kind of Valium or a new something, I tried everything. I've been in religion, and I've been in therapy, and I've done medication, and I've done rehabs, and I tried primal screaming, and I tried macrobiotics, and I was everything from Ram Dass to Rum Dum by the time I got here. And there was nothing left. Nothing. And it took that to get me here. It took that to get me here in a place where I was teachable. Because I'm the kind of drunk that I'll go on a run and alcohol will take everything away from me, and I come into Alcoholics Anonymous and the first thing I get back is my goddamn opinion. And it's my opinion and my judgment that just keeps me from getting this, because I sit there and I make judgments according to my self-centered observations of what I see. And so Alcoholics Anonymous is unobtainable to me because I still got a mind that wants to figure it out. I want to try to run the show. And I think Alcoholics Anonymous takes desperation. And it takes desperation because it takes that to get a guy like me to a place where I'm willing to take some directions that make absolutely no sense to me at all. And AA really doesn't make any sense. In 1977, I'd been sentenced to 2 years in prison, and a judge cut me a break, and he didn't carry out the sentence, told me I had to go into this rehab for evaluation for a little period of time. He says, you come back before me on this certain date, and if you've been doing the restitution and you got the good UAs and the good PO report and everything, we'll take a look at whether we're going to carry out this sentence or not. But if you cannot complete any of that stuff, you're going to do the 2 years in the state penitentiary. I went into this rehab, and I want to stay sober, and I want to stay sober bad because drinking's no fun anymore. Winter's coming on, and I spent a winter on the streets homeless, and it's a tough way to go. You can't even sit down at night because it's 5 or 10 degrees out, and if you sit down, you fall asleep. And if you fall asleep, you're a popsicle. I drank with a guy that was a popsicle. He ended up in the morgue. That's what happens. So you walk all goddamn night long. It doesn't matter how sick you are, how tired you are, how shaky you are. You walk all night long. You get rousted out of gas station bathrooms by owners that scream at you and tell you what a dirty piece of worthless human meat you are, and on and on and on. winter's coming on. I don't want to be homeless on the streets, and I don't want to do the 2 years in prison. I don't like jail. I've been to jail. I don't jail well. I'm not very good at it. I don't like it. I hate that. I hate having to go in there and put on that gorilla outfit and try to pretend like I'm something I'm not. I hate trying to have to punch guys, give Sunday punch guys before they say anything to me, so I'll let them know that they can't screw with me, when really what's going on is I'm scared to death and I feel like a shaky little terrified boy inside. But yet I got to put up this front because I'm scared to death. I hate living like that. I still have scars on my body from beefs I've gotten into that I have initiated to prove something to somebody in a county jail. I hate living like that. So I go into this place and I'm trying to stay sober and I really don't want to drink no more, but I got untreated alcoholism. See, I'm not the guy that, I always was under an illusion, and the illusion was that someday I'll grow up and I'll really make up my mind never to do this stuff again, and then I just won't. Well, the problem is that I can't do that. I've made up my mind for a couple years now. I don't want to do this stuff anymore, and I keep doing it. I can't stop. And I'm dying, and I'm in this place, and I've got untreated alcoholism, and I'm hanging on by my fingernails, and it's a losing battle. And I'm getting ready to drink because every day that goes by is another day that I just can't stand. And it's another day, it seems like every day I'm lonelier and more bored and more frustrated, and nothing I seem to do that I try to make me feel better ever seems to last or work for any extended period of time. And I'm just getting it up to here, and I'm ready to drink. I know it. I'm just starting to romanticize alcohol. And I grabbed the guy in a meeting, and I said to him, I need help, man. I need help. You got to do something. And would you help me? I'm afraid I'm going to drink. And he sat down with me in this kitchen, this dining hall in this rehab. There's a long, long hall where they used to feed a couple hundred guys, and I'm sitting there and I'm telling him everything that's going on with me. And I'm telling him about the 2 years in prison. And I'm telling him, I'm honest with him. I'm telling him about my emotional problems. And I'll tell you, emotionally, I was the kind of guy that I would go through these roller coaster things emotionally. And I don't understand. It's like I'm out of control. The big book, later I read, it says one of the symptoms of untreated alcoholism is we cannot control our emotional natures. We are a prey to misery and depression. And I'm that way, but I don't know that that's alcoholism. I think maybe I got a brain tumor or something. And I just go through these roller coaster rides. I think weird stuff all the time. It's like you take alcohol out of my life, and living with my mind is like driving cross country in a van full of 8-year-olds that have overdosed on sugar, and none of them like you. I got all these little voices in my head all the time. I walk into a meeting and there'll be some guy and he won't say hi to me, and my head's telling me he hates you. We got to kill him, punch him, don't let him get away with it. I walk in, I'll get called on in the discussion meeting in the halfway house, and I'll be sharing something, and there'll be 2 guys giggling in the back of the room, and I know what they're giggling about. I get aches and pains, and it's automatically cancer. Every time I get a headache, I can feel brain tumors growing in my head. I am absolutely insane, and I can't shut this thing off, and it never stops talking to me. It never will let up. And I'm telling this guy about it. I'm crazy, man. I can't even explain it to him as well as I'm explaining it to you. I'm just telling him I have crazy thoughts all the time, and I can't hold a job. I can get a job, I just can't hold a job. I'm always the guy that they're laying off, or they're firing, or they're letting go, and I remember this thing, one guy said to me, God, it just made me feel so awful. He said, Bob, you're a hard worker, and I'd like to keep you, but you're just not a team player, Bob. And I thought, yeah, shit. Yeah, I'm not a team player. I don't know how to be a team player. You give me a pint of Jack Daniels, I'll lead your team, but sober, I don't know how to fit with people. Because normal people that aren't drinking, they can do stuff. They can like make small talk. I can't make small talk. I get in a conversation, I don't know what to say. I can say something like, let's rob a 7-Eleven, but but just to talk about your day, I don't know how to do that, right? I'm telling this guy this, and I'm telling him about all my problems, and I said, man, I need help. And he said, he reaches in his pocket, and he pulls out his business card, and he gives it to me, and he points to the wall, and there's the 12 steps on the wall, and he says, if you'll put these into your life. And he says, I'll help you. All this stuff will take care of itself. It'll all straighten out. And he gets up and he walks way to the back of the dining hall to get another cup of coffee, and I'm sitting there and I'm looking at these 12 steps, and I'd seen him for several years in and out of Alcoholics Anonymous, but I really didn't pay any attention to him. It's like, when I was in the Boy Scouts, they had shit like that too, but I can't tell you what it was, You know what I mean? Preambles and stuff and creeds and stuff. I don't know what it was, right? What's that have to do with me? You know? Right? So I'm sitting there and I'm desperate, so I'm reading it. Okay. Powerless over alcohol. And I start getting into some of these steps, and I'm thinking, holy shit. And the more I read, the more I realize this guy hasn't heard anything I've told him. There's nothing in those steps. There's nothing that corresponds to any of my problems. I mean, you can stretch your imagination all you want. There's no link up here at all. I need a set of steps like step 1, make Bob's police record disappear. Step 2, give him $1,000. That would have helped a lot. Step 3, bring her back properly ashamed of herself. Or step 4, make my family realize how wrong they'd been about me. Or just give me a step that would make this shut up, like 5 shots of Jack Daniels would make it shut up. Give me a step that makes me feel good enough about life that I can come out and play with you like I did back then, Give me a step that'll let me sleep where I don't toss and turn and have weird dreams and wake up and feel unrested and just, where I'm tired all the time with that kind of tired that sleep never really solves. But no, we got stuff like turn your will and your life over to the care of God. Oh, jeez. I was raised a Catholic. I always have to say this. I used to make jokes about it, saying I was a recovered Catholic. That's not really fair. The Catholic Church, there's nothing wrong with it. The Catholic Church is a great, great spiritual institution, helps a lot of people. But as a little kid, I'm flawed. There's something wrong with my receiver. I don't think I heard what those other people heard. I think I had a propensity to listen through self-centered fear ears. And I'll tell you what I heard about. I didn't hear about a God of love. I heard about a God of judgment. And he knew everything I did. He could see in the dark, which is not good for a guy like me. That's a bad deal. He could read my mind, and I'm always thinking stuff I'm not supposed to be thinking, I remember one time, we had this deal during the year, it might have been Easter, but I'm not sure. I think it was Easter, where the whole class would go to this thing called confession, right? And the reason we're going to confession, now I'll tell you what, some of you that don't have the benefit of knowing what that is, confessions, it's sort of like what I always imagined a 5th step was like before I really did a 5th step, where you go in and you confess your sins, right? And you do that because you have to clean the slate, because the next day you're going with your whole class to do this deal called communion. And if you really, really want to piss God off, go get communion without a clean slate. And if you go with the class and you don't take the biscuit, the nun's there. And and the nuns terrified me. So I would go into the confessional, and I'm just a little kid, and I'm trying this deal, and I'm telling him all, yeah, I touched my thing, and I did, I imagined the nun without any clothes on, and I lied to my mother. Why did you lie to your mother? I don't know. It just seemed like a good idea at the time. All this stuff, I beat my sister up, and, whatever the deal was, I'm trying to be good, and I'm cleaning the slate. Now the problem is, he gives me the absolution. Now, I have to go until tomorrow morning without thinking nothing. And I can't do it. As a matter of fact, half the time, I'm not even out of the box, and I'm thinking stuff and I'm just one of those kind of guys. And if there's a God, I'm never going to measure up. I remember I'm always in trouble. They used to send me the principal all the time. They sent me to this priest one time, and he's a nice guy, I guess, and he's giving me a lecture on my behavior, and I said, Father, I'm sorry. I'm probably going to go to hell. He says, oh, son, he says, you won't go to hell. God has a lot of mercy. He says, God's created a place for people like you, though. It's called purgatory, and it's like hell. They burn you and torture you, and it's awful. But unlike hell, it only lasts for a couple 100 million years or something like that. And I get to be 12 or 13 years old, and I discover masturbation. I can picture this meter in heaven clicking off the millions of years. And I haven't even done anything yet. I'm just practicing. So I'm in Alcoholics Anonymous, and the prospect of turning my will and my life over to the care of God is ludicrous. I mean, come on. First of all, I've been hoping against hope that there isn't a God, because if there is, I am in a lot of trouble. I'd rather turn my will and my life over to Charles Manson. I'd do better than God. At least he's not going to punish me. And then the amends that really made me crazy was the amends step. God, the amends step made me nuts. I can't do that. It would take me forever to do that. I lived like an animal on the streets, and I robbed a lot of people. I stole a lot of things, and I don't even know who they are. I don't know. I just, I've stolen women's purses, and I've stolen stereos out of cars, and I've just gone up and down streets and robbed whatever was there, and I've broken into houses, and I've robbed stores, and I shoplifted, and I lived like that for years. And I did anything that I was a desperado. I did anything that I needed. None of it I'm proud of. I wish I could have told you I did something spectacular, like robbed a bank, but it was all very petty, little. I used to fantasize myself as being a gangster, and the police used to keep telling me I was a public nuisance. I wasn't even a gangster. I was just a petty little guy that was desperate and sleazy, and wasn't even glorious. I don't even have any great war stories. Everything I did was cheap and sleazy and petty. This guy comes back to me after I'm looking at the steps, and I get up and I leave, and I go up to my room, and within a couple days I started my last drunk, and on that last drunk I tried to commit suicide, and I couldn't pull it off. I just didn't have the courage to do it, and that ended me up in Alcoholics Anonymous, and I ended up here with a lack of options. I couldn't live with it, I couldn't live without it, and I was really desperate, and I couldn't kill myself, and I tell you something, I really didn't want to get sober, really. What I would have given anything for. I mean anything. I think I would have probably crossed lines to get this that are unimaginable. I might have even taken the life of someone dear, anything if God would have just said, Bob, if you'll kill your mother, I'll give you 5 years of getting high like you had when you were 17 and 18 years old. I might have gone for it. I'd have given anything for that. But the reality of my disease is I can't get that back no more. And I have a lack of options, and here I am. There's nothing left but AA. They say it's the last house on the block. And I went on that drunk, and I'm running from the law, and I'm homeless, and I'm coming to California because I figured California is a big place. There's a lot of people out there. The police will never catch up with me. They'll never find me. I can lose myself on the streets, and it's warm. There's no winters to worry about. And I started hitchhiking cross country, and I ended up in Las Vegas, Nevada, 1978. And I got to a point that I used to get to. As the disease of alcoholism progressed, my ability to stay drunk diminished. And what happened is that I would drink. I stopped eating when I drank. And I think it was a competition of stomach space or something. I didn't eat, and if you don't eat and you drink around when I started to run, here's the way I would drink. I would drink as much as I can until I passed out. Then I would come to, and I would drink as much as I can until I passed out. And I'd come to, and that's how I drank. I drank for oblivion. Because when the fun's gone and there's no more good times and it doesn't really make you feel great, oblivion's all you got. So I drank for oblivion. And when you drink like that, you can't stay drunk round the clock for long periods of time. And by the time I never made it to California, because by the time I'm in this van full of these guys and we're coming through Las Vegas, I am so sick and I'm in a dilemma. And the dilemma is that I have to drink to keep from jumping out of my skin and having seizures and everything. And the problem is I can't keep it down no more. And it's becoming a desperate struggle to keep enough alcohol down in me to just to take the madness off. And it's detox time. And I bailed out of that truck in Las Vegas, and I through some interventions for some security guards and some other people, and just a weird set of circumstances, I ended up in a detox in Las Vegas, Nevada, and I was ready. I'd been around Alcoholics Anonymous for a number of years, but I had never been ready. There's a line that goes through every meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous on the face of the earth. It goes through this meeting tonight, but it's an invisible line, and you can't see where it is. But if you're very lucky, you may realize which side of the line you're on. And on one side of the line is the people that are dying of alcoholism, and on the other side of the line is the people that are recovering from alcoholism. And the book defines it in chapter 5. It says that those who do not recover are people who cannot or will not completely give themselves to this simple program. And for almost 7 years, I was part of that group. I was on that side of the line. And I wasn't on that side of the line because I'm a bad guy. And I wasn't on that side of the line because I'm dumb. I was just on that side of the line because I wasn't desperate enough to ask the people on the other side of the line how I get over there. And in 1978, for desperation and a lack of alternatives, I reached out to some members of Alcoholics Anonymous in a group called the Floating Big Book Group. I got a sponsor. I joined that group, and I started following them around because they were the people that were very visible in AA. They were the doers. They were the people that brought the meetings into the detox I was in. When it came to 12-step work in Las Vegas, they were the people that were involved. They were involved in all of it. And I thank God I fell into their hands. I was so desperate. My God, if I'd have fallen into the hands of some Hare Krishnas, I might be out at the LA airport today with a starter rope coming out the back of my head. But I fell into their hands, and they started leading me down the path of recovery. And they started to tell me things that didn't make any sense to me. And you know what the amazing thing is that I started to do it. This guy told me, he says, get down on your knees every morning and ask whatever's running the universe for help. And I started to say something. He says, you don't have to say anything. I know you don't believe in God. Oh, yeah, I believe in God. Oh, we know. How could you believe? What would you have to believe in God for? Just do it. Just do it. It's okay that you don't really know if there's a God there. It's okay that you might secretly suspect that even if there is a God, why would he help a bum like you? It's all right. Just do it. And then get down on your knees at the end of the day and thank whatever's running that the universe for that day of sobriety, and know that you didn't do that. Look, here's what you did. You're in detox. Know that you didn't do it. And they told me to go to a meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous every single day and get there early and stick out my hand to somebody and stay late and talk to some people. They encouraged me to go to coffee. They got me involved in book studies. They started to take me through the process in these steps. They got me reading the big book every day. I read the big book of I don't know that I read it every single day. I probably read it now in the last couple of years, 5 days a week I'll read something out, maybe 6, because there are times when I can't. But there's probably 15 years of my sobriety where I don't think there was a day that went by I didn't at least read a couple pages out of that big book. Same pages over and over again. And I heard a guy at the convention talk about it, and it's really true. I used to suspect that, he made a funny comment. He said he was reading the 26th edition of the big book. And there's only 3 editions, but every time he read it, it was different. It was his 26th time reading it. Right? And we used to talk in my group about the GSO elves. They come out in the middle of the night, and they look at you and figure out what's going on in your life and then change the words in the book to fit it. Because it would seem like that sometimes. And I still get new stuff out of that book all the time. All the time. And I am really glad to have the position of a student of recovery in Alcoholics Anonymous. And I run my mouth a lot in AA, but I know that I have a long way to go. I have a long way to go. There are some, I heard a guy not too long ago talking about outgrowing Alcoholics Anonymous. How could you do that? How could you ever trust in God enough that you don't? You mean you got to a point where you finally trust in God enough that you don't worry anymore? That you've got the step 10 and 11 down so pat that when somebody attacks you, you automatically see where they're really coming from and try to be helpful to them? I always want to look for the lobotomy scars when people say shit like that. I can't imagine it. I tell you, I got a long way to go. I think my recovery in Alcoholics Anonymous is kind of like walking towards the horizon. I've been walking for 21 and a half years, and every time I look up, it's, oh man, it's way out there still. But I look back, and I've come a long way, but God, I got a long way to go. There's a lot of areas of incompleteness in my life. I'm far from finished my 9th step. I've come to understand and accept and actually cherish the knowledge that I will owe all my life. I was such a rotten person for so many years. Just to get even, I will have to spend the rest of my life trying to help God's kids, just to get even. And it doesn't bother me. I hope I am never even. It's people that get even and get well and get complete here that don't come anymore. I see them in detox on a regular basis. The guys with 25 years that got well. And you hear them say things like that, like all the time, like, I don't know why I drank again. I was 25 years sober. I had a big house and a wife and a business. I was making $300,000 a year. I had everything going for me, as if all that crap's a treatment for alcoholism. Right? I want to talk about one thing. I don't think I've talked about this down here. When I was, maybe I have. When I was about 4.5 years sober, I was having a lot of employment problems, a lot of them. And I was starting to run scared. I'm 4.5 years sober, and I'm getting ready to quit my 9th job in 4.5 years. That does not show a lot of consistency. And I'll tell you what I'm afraid of. I'm afraid I'm going to become one of those guys that's eventually sober 30 years and's had 45 jobs and has hated every single one of them. Because every time I go to work somewhere, it's the same thing. I get a good job, and I go in there, and then after a while, I start noticing how they're taking advantage of me. And they're not paying me enough, and I'm working harder than everybody else, and I start noticing how they're screwing up, and they're not doing it right. And eventually, what happens is I quit, and I go get another job. And here I am, I'm 4.5 years sober, and I'm getting ready to quit my 9th job, only I don't want to quit it because I know by now, I know the truth. I know that even though it looks like they're jerks, it's not them, it's me. But I don't know how to change it. And I don't know how to get a different result out of this. And I went to my sponsor and I said, what do I got to do? He says, you got to change your attitude. Yeah, but what does that mean? I don't get that. And there was a guy named Chuck Chamberlain, and Chuck helped a lot of people, and I was one of them. And I went to a thing up in Santa Clara, and I was on a panel up there, and Chuck was one of the speakers, and after a meeting, I talked to Chuck about what was going on with me. And Chuck said a few things that changed my life that were the most valuable information anyone's ever given me. Information that changed the course of the next 15 years of my life to the point it's unbelievable. I went to Chuck, and I told him what was going on, and Chuck said to me, he said, kid, you got it all wrong. He said, how much money you make, how much you're appreciated, how much more work you do than those other people is none of your business. He said, you go to work, you're to go there for one reason and then one reason only, and that is to be helpful. And that's it. It is your job to be of service and help God's kids. You're to go into work to be helpful to the customers, your fellow employees, and your employer. And he says, if you'll get up in the morning and you'll try this for a while, and you get up every morning and you ask the old boy upstairs to help you to put yourself aside enough just to go in there and be helpful and keep trying that. And I started trying it. And I started trying that because I was scared. I was a young guy. And I'm going to have to work probably another 40 or 50 years, and I don't want to feel like I'm going to work and it's like doing time. I want to be like some of those old timers in AA that are sober a while. When they talk about their jobs, their eyes sparkle. I want to feel at work the way I feel in AA. So I started doing this, and I started doing it for no other reason. 8 months later, I'm at a Denny's with a guy that I sponsor, and he's telling me about his job, and I'm sharing a little bit with him about me. And he stops me and he says, God, you really like your job, don't you? I thought, Jesus Christ, I do. And I didn't even realize it was such a slow thing because it didn't happen overnight. I started saying that prayer and I'd go to work the first few days and I wouldn't even be in there 20 minutes and the customers are bothering me and, but it was a slow, you don't change things like this in AA. It's a slow, God works very slowly, but he's old. I mean, he's very old. And within a couple months after that, I'm managing the place, which eventually led to an opportunity to go back and buy into a business and work my way into a business that I own today. And I started applying the principles of Alcoholics Anonymous that Chuck and some other people had taught me in the business that I own today, and we've done really, really well. And it's been on my mind a little bit because I noticed something in the last years that I've been experiencing some fear in business and some burnout, and we're trying to change the face of our business, and we're changing the direction that the company's going into, and it's kind of exciting. And I guess maybe one of the reasons I'm talking about this is for me, I need to remember where it all came from. It all came from doing a 12-step job at work. And I need to get more focused on doing that in my business today. I think maybe in the last year or two I've turned everything over to other people and they run my business, and I've gotten away from the hands-on position of going in there and of being of service. And my job has turned more into putting out fires. And that's what happens sometimes when companies get real big. And at one time we went from a company that was $600,000 a year to almost $10 million. And I never wanted to do that. You know what I wanted to do? I wanted to be as comfortable going to work as I am in AA. That's all. That's all I really ever wanted. I never knew that there's a spiritual principle in this universe that you will get abundance and richness in life in direct proportion to how much you help others. You cannot fail to achieve that. It is absolute. You can count on that like you can count on gravity. You just can't control gravity, and you can't control how it's going to come back to you, but it always comes back to you. If you're new here, I want to welcome you to Alcoholics Anonymous. There's a whole package here. It involves sponsorship. It involves the steps. It involves service. And it really starts with one alcoholic looking another alcoholic in the eyes and asking for help. And I hope if you're new, I hope you come to another meeting. I hope you get a sponsor here that's grounded in AA. And I hope I come back here a year from now and get to listen to you tell me how much your life has changed. Thank you.
Thank you, Bob, for sharing. Really appreciate that.